This is UNSC Pelican Echo 216. Can you hear me? This is UNS...
Remember when Halo Infinite was supposed to come out late last year? It was only following a poorly received gameplay presentation that Xbox made the decision to delay the title. And after having played through roughly the first 4 hours of its main campaign on Xbox Series X, I've gotta say, boy oh boy, did they make the right decision. They actually took the community feedback in stride and drastically improved the game's previously apparent technical and visual flaws. Now, during this preview stage, I'm only allowed to talk about my experience with the first 4 main missions and a handful of side missions, but that was enough to get a general vibe and idea for this game's goals. Right out of the gate, I have to praise the gunplay of Halo Infinite, which is arguably the most important thing 343 had to nail. If you've played the free-to-play multiplayer mode that Surprise launched, then you probably already have an idea for how good this game feels to play, all enhanced by the myriad options that you have to really fine-tune your controller or keyboard and mouse setup. The Halo series has always been known for its tight first-person shooter controls, its wide array of satisfying and impactful weapon types alongside useful tools, and its playful physics, and all of that is retained and improved upon in Infinite. One of my favorite additions to the game so far is the multi-purpose grapple shot. Its use is more limited in multiplayer for balancing reasons, but in the hands of Master Chief in the campaign, it can be deployed quite frequently, and it paves the road to some really badass mobility options that can serve as both a great way to go on the offensive and a swift method of escape. That increased horizontal and vertical mobility makes combat just that much more dynamic, creative, and a ton of fun. The grapple shot can also be used offensively with the ability to hook onto enemies directly and stun them temporarily, or to pull distant explosive barrels to you so you can use it against them. Beyond all that, the grapple shot is also a fantastic way to traverse the campaign's sizable sandbox open world. I thought vehicles would serve as my main mode of navigation and transportation, but turns out the grapple shot is just far more flexible and a far more fun way of traversing the open world environment and scaling cliffs. Now, Halo is no stranger to open areas and environments, with Halo Infinite taking inspiration from Halo 1 specifically when it comes to aesthetic and aspects of its open world design. Recall that earlier sections of Halo 1 involved you traversing this open space with various objectives that took you across different parts of the map. Halo Infinite takes that concept and vastly expands upon it for an experience that truly feels tailor-made to be open world from beginning to end. Outside of main missions marked in yellow on the map, the open world is also sprinkled with various side missions, objectives, and collectibles you can tackle. Side missions include forward operating bases, or FOBs, that you can capture from enemies to unlock a fast travel location, alongside a literal forward operating base where you can pick your loadout and vehicles to tackle nearby missions. Capturing FOBs will also mark your map with other nearby side missions, objectives, collectibles, and points of interest, so if you really want to go ham on everything the open world has to offer, then the gameplay loop becomes tackling these FOBs, uncovering more markers on the map that guide you to other missions and objectives and collectibles, and just kind of going through that process. You've also got things like target assassination side missions, distress signals from nearby allies, as well as side missions that are marked in purple on the map, which tend to be more extensive, multi-phase side missions. Their objectives are nothing to write home about per se. It's usually just kill all the enemies in the area, destroy certain structures, survive hordes for a certain amount of time, or activate certain switches, sometimes one or the other times a combination of these objectives string together. But the fun of this game lies in the challenge of the first-person shooter gameplay, which sees you fighting strategically positioned waves of enemies with pretty good and aggressive AI. It's all about that freedom of being able to pick the loadout you want, approach enemy camps and bases seamlessly integrated into the open world from any direction, and just unleashing Master Chief through a combination of creativity and skill. And as you progress through the game, a number of progression systems will further enhance your capabilities. Completing main and side missions, for example, will earn you what are called Valor Points, which contributes to what is essentially a non-monetized single-player Battle Pass-like progression system, where new weapons, gear, and manpower will unlock and become available to be deployed at FOBs as you earn Valor and meet the cost requirements of unlockable items. As you complete main missions, you'll also unlock upgradable equipment that will either grant passive enhancements like stronger shield, or active tools like the grapple shot, or this enemy detecting and tagging grenade, among others that are unlocked in missions beyond what I'm allowed to talk about in this preview video. These are upgraded through what are called Spartan cores that you'll find in lootable chests scattered about in the open world, important collectibles which you may stumble upon by accident as you explore the open world, or which will be marked on your map if it's nearby a captured FOB that has revealed nearby points of interest. And there are more collectibles beyond just Spartan cores, like these Mjolnir lockers, which essentially unlock various cosmetics for the multiplayer mode as you find these and loot these. But yeah, unlocking and upgrading these equipment tools through Spartan cores, alongside unlocking new weapons and gear through Valor points, serve as the main source of progression, which helps keep the gameplay fresh at a good pace. Combine the progression system with a wide variety of weapons, gears, tools, and vehicles to experiment with, to mess around with, both ones you've unlocked and ones you find out and about in the open world, all paired with a general sense of freedom the open world structure grants, and you've got a game that, at least in the first few hours, kept me pretty hooked. On top of all that, the variations in enemy placement, turret positioning, and overall level design help the game maintain a fun level of challenge in the few hours that I've played of it. Mixing things up further are a variety of boss battles who you'll encounter in the open world or throughout the main campaign, which tend to be more bullet-spongy versions of enemies, but more aggressive in their behavior, a few special moves and conditions here and there, with battle arenas typically designed around them. That alone forces you to be more strategic about your mobility and your gunplay and how you deploy the various tools that you obtain throughout the course of the game. Halo Infinite truly does feel like a sandbox in every sense of the word, in that the devs have established a bunch of systems, placed enemies and levels here and there, provided a bunch of tools and upgrade options, and then just let players loose to play around. As for main missions and what my impressions of those are so far, they're essentially significantly grander scale versions of side missions. Plenty of main missions also take place seamlessly in the open world, but there are times when you're delving deeper into a more dungeon-esque area into enemy territory, there might be a brief and fast loading screen transition as you hit an elevator button or something. Objectives-wise, you're still mostly going to be killing enemies, activating switches, finding batteries to open gates and power bridges that will allow you to proceed, but everything just feels bigger, and this is where a lot of the cool set pieces will occur, all married with a main story told through myriad cutscenes. It's hard to gauge the quality of the overall story given I'm still fairly early in the game, but what I will say is that the cutscenes themselves do look really gorgeous and are shot with great cinematic flair, especially with how transition from gameplay to cutscene and vice versa tends to be seamless, with an emphasis on long shots a la God of War or MGS5, where it feels like the camera rarely cuts. Performances are also really solid so far, and Master Chief is still Master Chief. He's usually the strong and silent type, with moments where he does speak or has a quip or two to say, and he's usually, the badass that he is, with the occasional humorously dry dialogue.
Requires a hack.
Okay. And you can do that?
No. New plan. Scuttle the ship.
One M808 Scorpion. In pretty good shape, too. Could be useful, if you like that kind of thing.
Oh, I like it.
He was not friendly. By the looks of him, he was some sort of leader. They called him Tremonius.
Not anymore.
I also like his dynamic with the new AI simply named Weapon, whose polite secretary personality serves as a nice contrast to Master Chief.
Done. Oh.
What is it?
This place is an interrogation facility, run by our elite friend back there, Chaklock. His reputation is not good.
Neither is mine.
Though not all of her jokes and quips land, some of the humor can feel a bit too forced in Marvel Cinematic Universe fashion, but nothing too detracting.
Can you operate it?
In my sleep? Not that I sleep. Wow, look at this place. It's so full of more monsters coming to kill us.
From a presentation standpoint, the game so far has really impressed, and the same holds true outside of cutscenes. Graphics have undoubtedly received a noticeable upgrade since last year, foregoing the plasticky and almost incomplete-looking visuals in favor of more detailed models and textures and general across-the-board enhancements, while still retaining the modernized Halo 1 visual language that the devs were striving for, whether it's the macro and micro details on Master Chief himself, the vistas that the open world offers, or the more alien ships and structures you get to fight your way through, this is overall a very pretty game. I wouldn't say it's the most graphically advanced I've ever seen per se, and with the game being cross-generation, I'm sure there were some compromises that had to be made to accommodate both last-gen and current-gen consoles, but it still looks damn fine on Series X. Enemy models also seem to look a lot better than they did a year ago, and there's just a lot of personality to their animations, and things like being able to shoot them in specific limbs and them reacting accordingly all contribute to the overall presentation of this title. The music is also just phenomenal and very recognizable, kicking in at just the right time for the right occasion, be it the more serene symphonies that fade in during peaceful open world moments, or the more intense percussion-heavy tunes that accentuate on-screen action.
Hostiles eliminated. Glad we made it in time.
And just the overall sound design of this game, be it just background noise of the wilderness, or the sound that guns make and how impactful that makes them feel, it's all been excellent thus far. The game also feels pretty polished overall. Small things like the occasional enemy limb clipping through a wall and ragdolling around are largely ignorable and negligible, but a bigger issue I encountered was where, when I would bring up the map menu, the frame rate would take a huge hit. The problem wasn't there initially, but later in my preview playthrough, it became very distractingly noticeable. So hopefully stuff like this will be ironed out when the final game launches next month, but other than these few problems that stood out a bit, honestly, my experience with the game thus far has been overall very smooth and relatively polished. All the more reason to be glad that the title was delayed by an extra year, and the performance in terms of frame rate aside from the map issue is pretty smooth. I've not noticed any frame rate dips or any stutters. It all just runs like a dream as far as I can tell. Now, with all said and done, do keep in mind that I've only played a few hours of this game. The real test will be whether the game will remain fun for the next couple dozen hours, or however long it takes to beat. There's always that initial glow in the first few hours of a game, but whether that glow can be retained throughout the whole experience, that's something that remains to be seen. Will the game keep things feeling fresh for the length and duration of its campaign and side activities? Will I encounter enough variety of enemies, challenges, and level design to veil some of the more repetitive aspects? Will the story and campaign ultimately deliver? Will the game stay relatively polished all the way through? These are all questions that I won't be able to answer until later, but I hope you'll look forward to my full review, and in the meantime, I hope this video served as a nice little appetizer to help inform your purchase decision. So far, so good. Really good even. I've been having a blast, the gunplay is just awesome and just doesn't get old. There's very little I have to complain about for now, and I'm excited to dive further in. I do have to mention that it's a damn shame that the game won't launch with co-op, as I feel like this could easily be the most fun Halo co-op experience yet with this open world structure. Now, for folks like myself who tend to enjoy playing campaign single player first, it's not the biggest deal in the world, but I know plenty of Halo enthusiasts will be eagerly awaiting the addition of a key feature for them. Better late and polished than never, I suppose, and I understand that because of the open world structure, implementing co-op is probably a more complex endeavor than it was with past Halo entries, but still worth pointing out. That aside though, so far, Halo Infinite's campaign feels like it's on its way to delivering, but I'll know for sure by next month. Until then, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on what you have seen of Halo Infinite thus far, whether you're excited for this game, whether you're still on the fence, or whether this is just not for you. Just feel free to share your general thoughts on Halo Infinite in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.